You don't need a chair, Dad. This seatle's for my father-in-law.
They took my chair. But they forgot whose name is still on the house.
You don't need a chair, Dad. This seat's for my father-in-law. That's what my son said, loud enough that the whole table heard. His voice cut through the clatter of cutlery and polite conversation like a blade. I stood there for a moment, stunned, holding a chipped Pyrex casserole dish still hot from the oven, steam fogging up my glasses. I'd baked my mother's old green bean recipe, creamy with the fried onions on top just the way Caleb liked when he was little. But he didn't look at me like a son looking at his father. He looked at me like an obstacle. On my right, his wife, Kristen, smirked. She shifted a wine glass out of the way as her father, Elliot, buttoned up in a blue Brooks Brothers sweater, eased into the seat I'd occupied for 23 years at that table. The same seat I'd paid for, piece by piece, when I bought the dining set from a guy off Secor Road back in '99. No place card had my name on it this year, just a folded card in faux calligraphy that read, Dad Elliot. It hit me harder than I thought it would. I wasn't Dad anymore. Not to him. Before we continue, if this story shocks you already, subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. Now back to what happened next. My name is Harold Jensen. I'm 58 years old. I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, just a few blocks from the Maumee River and the old Jeep plant where I worked most of my adult life. I gave that company everything. 40-hour weeks became 60. Holidays came and went. Missed birthdays, sore backs, scalded hands from radiator fittings gone wrong. But I always made it home for Christmas. Always. And this year, for the first time, I felt like a guest in my own legacy, the house where the dinner was held. That was my house. At least it had been. I put the down payment on it in 2001 after my wife, Marilyn, died. I wanted something stable for Caleb. He was just 10 then, skinny as a broom handle and always cold. I still remember him huddled by the floor vent in the living room, wrapped in a fleece blanket she'd sewn. I worked 2 jobs to make that mortgage, Jeep by day and nights stocking shelves at the Mayor on Alexis Road. The smell of cardboard and motor oil clung to me for years. There were nights I came home with my hands so cracked from coolant and box cutters that I could barely hold a fork. But the house mattered. It was safety. It was proof that even after losing Marilyn, we still had a home. I paid off the house in 2020. That Christmas, Caleb and Kristen told me they were expecting. He cried, hugged me tight, called me Dad 10 times that night. Things changed after that, gradually. At first it was little things, fewer calls, less time with my granddaughter, no more weekend visits to fix cabinet hinges or check on the sump pump. The house felt quieter each time I came back from work, like even the walls were waiting for voices that didn't come anymore. Then one day, Kristen handed me a folder, said it was refinancing paperwork, told me all I had to do was sign the last page. It felt off. My gut tightened the way it always did when something wasn't right on the assembly line. I told her I'd look it over at home. She laughed. It wasn't cruel exactly, just dismissive, like I was the old man fussing over things I didn't understand anymore. We've got it handled now, Harold, but I never signed. I tucked that folder away in my Sears shoebox, the one I kept under the bed with all the important papers, Marilyn's letters, social security statements, birth certificate copies, and the original deed from the county clerk's office. The box smelled faintly of old paper and cedar. It was the kind of place a man keeps his proof of existence. Every page still had my name on it, and only mine. Fast forward to this past December. I arrived at the house around 4:45 p.m. It had snowed the night before, just a light dusting, but the sidewalk was already cleared. Not by me. I used to be the one out there at 6 a.m. every Christmas morning, shoveling in my work boots before the coffee even brewed. There was something steady about clearing a path for your family before they woke. This time, it was a landscaping company. I could tell by the perfect edges and the tire tracks left behind by a plow blade. A red pickup idled down the street as if on call for another job. Inside, everything gleamed. The smell hit me first. Roasted garlic, fresh paint, and something floral I didn't recognize. New furniture, white marble counters, a chrome light fixture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. My old recliner was gone. The shelf with Marilyn's cookbooks, gone too. Replaced by designer wine racks and espresso machines with Italian labels I couldn't pronounce. The front closet was full. No room for my coat, so I hung it over the banister. The dining table had 12 place settings, 11 names, none of them mine. I looked around. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe my card slid under something. Kristen passed by, reapplying her lipstick in a mirror. Her reflection caught mine for half a second. She smiled like someone who'd been expecting a question and was already ready with an answer. "Seating's tight this year," she said lightly. "We figured you wouldn't mind standing. You always said you like to keep moving." The words landed soft, but cold. The kind of cold that starts in the chest. Elliot chuckled from across the room, already sipping the Pinot. He looked comfortable, like this was his house now, too. I looked at Caleb. He didn't meet my eyes, just nodded toward the living room like I should go sit there until dinner was over, like a kid being told to wait for dessert. My mouth opened, then closed. The words I wanted to say felt heavy and clumsy, so I nodded, said nothing. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a can of Coke, and stood by the back door, watching the snow melt into the deck boards. The cold air seeped through the old weather stripping and made my knuckles ache. Dinner started without me. I heard laughter, glasses clinking, silverware scraping across plates. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody came to get me. For 20 minutes, I just stood there, listening to a life I'd built carry on without me. The house felt smaller and bigger at the same time. Smaller because I'd been shoved to its edge. Bigger because of the distance that had grown between me and everyone in it. Eventually, I walked back in. Figured maybe I'd grab a plate, find a folding chair, wedge myself somewhere. But that's when Caleb stood and said it. "You don't need a chair, Dad. This seat's for my father-in-law." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict. I didn't say a word. Didn't throw the casserole. Didn't cry. Didn't argue. I just turned. Walked out the front door. Coat still on the banister. Keys in my pocket. The snow had started again. Tiny flakes drifting down like ash. My truck was parked across the street. 2003 Ford Ranger, navy blue, rust around the fenders. I'd replaced the clutch myself 3 months ago. Lying on a creeper in the driveway with a trouble light and a bad shoulder. Still had the grease under my fingernails. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the house. The lights glowing warm through the windows. The shadows of people who no longer saw me as one of them. And I remembered something. Something important. That house still had my name on it. The next morning, I woke up in my old apartment over on Tremainsville Road. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, nothing fancy. Just a twin bed, a microwave, and a recliner I picked up at a Goodwill for $40. The radiator ticked all night like it always did, spitting and sighing with that soft metallic heartbeat you only notice when you've got nobody to talk to. But it was warm, quiet, mine. Light crept in through the thin beige curtains, turning the dust in the air gold. The window glass rattled when the wind caught it just right. I could hear the muffled sound of a city waking up, buses grumbling down Tremainsville, tires crunching on salt, some guy downstairs arguing with his girlfriend on the phone. It wasn't home, but it was real, simple, paid for by me. I sat at the small card table I used as a kitchen counter and opened the Sears shoebox I hadn't touched in years. The cardboard edges were soft from handling. The smell of old paper and faint glue rose like something sacred. Everything was still there. Deed, tax records, a stack of monthly statements from when I paid off the house in full. June 2020, $837.25. the last payment marked with a red paid stamp from Glass City Bank. I ran my thumb across that stamp for a long time. The ink had bled a little into the paper fibers. It felt like rubbing a scar. You don't notice it's healed until something touches it just right. I hadn't signed away anything. No refinance. No name transfer. I remembered Kristen's little trick months earlier, sliding the folder across the table like I was some senile burden. Like my name on a line didn't mean anything anymore. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't weak. I just didn't like conflict. Never did. But now I was cold, in a place I didn't want to be, while Elliot warmed his feet under the table I built with my own hands. So I started digging. I spread the papers out across the table, one by one, careful not to wrinkle them. Receipts, utility bills, property taxes, insurance premiums, all in my name. My handwriting scrawled across decades. There was a rhythm to it, a timeline of a life lived in payments and perseverance. I found an old envelope dated July 2016, Caleb's first year out of college, where I sent him $500 to cover his rent. A note inside, in my handwriting. Don't tell your mom. Just get back on your feet. Love, Dad. The ink had faded to a light blue, but I could still see the slight hesitation in the D. That's how I knew it was from right after the layoff scare at the plant, when everything felt uncertain. He never did pay me back, and I never asked. But maybe I should have. I thought about all those little things that go unpaid in a family. Not just money, time, respect. The way a man keeps giving because he doesn't know how to stop. You think you're buying peace, but really you're just teaching people they can take without asking. By noon, I was dressed and out the door. The sky was gray, heavy with leftover snow clouds. I dropped by the county clerk's office that afternoon. Parking was a mess, like it always is after the holidays. The lot was slushy, half-frozen tire ruts reflecting the winter light like glass. I walked carefully, my old work boots squeaking on the salt. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. The place smelled like toner and coffee. I waited in line behind a woman arguing about a dog bite citation, her voice echoing off the tile floor. Everyone pretended not to listen, but we all did. When it was my turn, I handed over the deed. My fingers left little salt marks on the manila folder. The clerk, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a Detroit Lions thermos, looked it over, typed for a bit, and handed it back. Her nails were painted the same light blue my wife used to wear. Funny what details stick. "Still in your name, Mr. Jensen?" she said, glancing up. "Nothing's been changed." I nodded slowly. "Good," I said. "That's all I needed to know." She tilted her head, curious but kind. "Is everything okay?" I smiled, but not in the way people smile when things are okay. It was that half smile people make when they're holding back something sharp. "I think it's about to be." That night, I took out a yellow legal pad and started writing a letter. Short, direct, no emotion, just facts. To Caleb Jensen and Kristen Jensen, current occupants of 1947 Ridgeview Lane. The words came out clean, one line at a time. My handwriting looked steadier than I expected. I wrote the whole thing by hand first, the way Marilyn used to write grocery lists. Neat, deliberate, permanent. Then I typed it clean on the computer at the library the next day. The monitor flickered faintly, and the keyboard keys clicked like old typewriter arms. I didn't want Kristen's snarky voice saying anything about my handwriting being unreadable. At the bottom, I attached scanned copies of the original deed, the property tax bills, and that red-stamped final payment. I printed it all out at FedEx, stapled it tight, and slid it into a USPS priority envelope. I spent the extra $6.35 for certified mail. Let the record show I gave them notice. The days ticked by. No calls. No texts. Just silence. But that was fine. Silence had become familiar. I'd grown used to the hum of the radiator, the groan of pipes, the way my own footsteps sounded louder than they used to. I spent my mornings sipping Folgers from a chipped mug, watching the neighborhood kids throw snowballs on their way to school. Their laughter bounced off the brick walls, bright against the cold. For a few minutes each day, I could almost forget how small my apartment felt. Afternoons, I walked down to the old Jeep plant just to see it. They'd turned part of it into a warehouse distribution center now. The loading bays had new logos. The old sign with the Jeep emblem was gone, replaced with something bland and corporate. But some of the upper windows still had the grease smudges from back when we'd eat lunch up there, looking out over the river. One of the younger guys walking by gave me a nod. "You used to work here?" I nodded. "Long time ago." "Respect, man," he said, then kept walking. It meant more than I expected it to. Those 3 words, "respect, man," hit deeper than anything Caleb had said in years. It reminded me of a time when people noticed what you built with your hands, not just what you owned. On December 30th, I got the delivery confirmation, signed by Kay Jensen. That's all I needed. I waited. New Year's Eve came. I didn't go out, didn't even turn on the TV, just sat by the window and watched as fireworks popped behind the trees on the horizon. The sound carried across the frozen air like distant thunder. Somewhere, Caleb was pouring champagne, laughing, maybe showing off his new espresso machine, maybe toasting to another year of success. I wonder if he even knew what Kristen had signed for. I wonder if he even cared. January 3rd, 10:13 a.m. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Is this some kind of joke?" Caleb's voice sharp, cold. I didn't answer at first. I wanted him to feel the silence. "Dad," he snapped, "you're evicting us?" "No," I said finally. "I'm just enforcing ownership." "You said this house was for the family." "No," I said again, quieter this time. "I said it was for my family. Turns out that's not you. You can't do this." "I already did." The line went quiet for half a beat. Then I heard him exhale hard through his nose, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. I hung up. He didn't call back. For 2 days the silence stretched thin again. The radiator hissed. The snow outside turned gray at the edges, melting into dirty slush along the curb. By January 5th, my cousin Dennis, who works for a title company over in Perrysburg, texted me a photo. The message came through while I was sitting in my truck outside the laundromat. Kristen had tried to file a counterclaim on the house. It was rejected. No signed transfer, no legal standing, nothing to argue. I still owned it. Fully, clearly, legally. Dennis added, "Might want to swing by Ridgeview soon. Movers showed up this morning." I stared at that text for a long time before starting the engine. The steering wheel was cold beneath my hands. The truck smelled faintly of old coffee and engine grease. I did swing by, and sure enough, there they were. A couple guys in neon vests and a rented U-Haul, carrying out boxes labeled kitchen, books, and one marked in red, ease barware. Oh, the wind was sharp that day, cutting through my jacket as I parked across the street. I didn't get out, I just watched. The house looked smaller somehow, or maybe I was finally seeing it without the fog of sentiment. At one point, Caleb stepped out onto the porch. He looked thinner, less polished. No tie, just a wrinkled hoodie. Kristen stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression somewhere between anger and disbelief. He saw me. I raised a hand. Not a wave. Just acknowledgement. He didn't wave back. He went back inside. And for the first time in months, I felt something settle in me. Not happiness. Not even revenge. Just peace. The kind that comes from knowing what's yours again. January 6th. The house was quiet now. Driveway empty. Porch light still blinking from a loose wire I told Caleb to fix last summer. The wind carved through the naked trees, low and restless, rattling the brittle seed pods that still clung to the maples. The old swing set I installed back in 2007 creaked softly, metal on metal, like a ghost remembering how it used to hold the weight of a laughing child. Caleb used to push his daughter on that swing every Sunday, back when he still called me Dad with something real behind it. I stood at the curb, keys in hand. No ceremony, no audience, just me in a house that had outlasted more than I ever thought it would. A house that never betrayed me, even when the people inside it did. The front door opened with a familiar groan. The sound hit me in the chest. Hinges I'd oiled 100 times, but never fully silenced. The air inside smelled faintly of pine cleaner and the ghost of old dinners, baked deep into drywall and floorboards. But beneath that was a hollowness, the kind you feel, not smell, like someone had tried to dress the house up in someone else's clothes and failed to make it fit. They'd gutted my garage. The emptiness there was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. My workbench, gone. The snap-on socket sets I'd collected piece by piece over 30 years, gone. The DeWalt drill with my initials scratched into the handle, gone. Even Marilyn's old ceramic pencil cup from when she taught 3rd grade, gone. In its place stood a sleek steel shelving unit, cold and impersonal, lined with Kristen's yoga mats and Caleb's overpriced golf gear. I stood there for a long moment, hand on the door frame, letting the cold air pool around my boots. My throat tightened, not from anger, not yet, just from the shock of seeing the place where I'd fixed bikes, sharpened mower blades, taught Caleb how to change oil, erased. I walked into the kitchen. It gleamed, but not in a way that felt alive. Marble counters stretched smooth and pale under the soft glow of recessed lights. A backsplash of cold gray tile shimmered slightly, perfect for a magazine ad, but alien in what was supposed to be a family home. My wife's old spice rack, the one that still smelled faintly of paprika and bay leaf, gone. In its place, a neat row of minimalist glass containers with scripted labels. Thyme, basil, rosemary, perfect, soulless. I opened the junk drawer, empty. No twist ties tangled in a ball. No expired coupons from the tire man down on Alexis Road. No busted Goodyear pens. Just a smooth wooden bottom, polished and clean, like nobody ever lived here at all. They'd erased me. But houses keep secrets. Walls remember. Floors creak in the same spots no matter how you remodel. The next day I visited my lawyer. Not some skyscraper guy. Just Dale Sutterman, an old friend with an office across from a Dollar Tree and a window that rattled when semis passed on Secor. We used to fish together at Lake Erie before his knees gave out. The place smelled faintly of coffee and legal pads. "Harold," he said, shaking his head as he scanned the letter I'd sent Caleb. His glasses slid low on his nose. "You sure you want to go through with this?" "Already did." He studied me, saw something in my eyes that didn't need explaining, and nodded. "Then let's make it clean. File the repossession with county records. Post the legal notices in the paper, and get a no-contact order just in case." I slid a manila envelope across his desk. Inside, printed photos of the house, the certified mail receipt, a notarized statement from the county clerk, and a short summary of what Caleb and Kristen had tried to pull with that fake refinance folder. Dale read in silence, his brow furrowed, the paper crinkling slightly as he turned each page. When he finally looked up, his voice had lost the lawyer polish and softened into something personal. "You really loved that boy, didn't you?" "Still do," I said. My voice sounded rougher than I meant it to, but love don't mean letting someone walk all over you. He didn't argue, just nodded once and started filling out the paperwork. The local paper ran the notice on January 10th. Small font. Legal section. Tucked between foreclosure listings and estate settlements. Just a few dry lines. Notice of property reassignment and owner reinstatement. 1947 Ridgeview Lane. Filed by Harold Jensen. It didn't need to be flashy. The people who needed to see it would. Sure enough, by the weekend my phone started buzzing. My sister called first. Her voice was sharp, protective. "What the hell happened at Christmas, Harold?" A guy I used to work with at Jeep, Mike from the paint line, texted, "Heard you reclaim the castle. Respect." Even Marilyn's old church group left me a voicemail. The soft tremor in the voice made my chest ache. We heard what your son did. You're not alone, Harold. Good on you. But not every call was kind. Kristen's brother, some cocky dentist from Akron with a fancy Instagram full of cars and vacation photos, left a voicemail dripping with cussing and cheap threats. You think you're going to scare Caleb out of his own home with paperwork? You're just a bitter old man with nothing left. You're pathetic. I listened to it twice, not because it hurt, but because I wanted to remember the tone. I saved the voicemail, then filed it with Dale, just in case. January 15th, I returned to Ridgeview with a set of new keys and a padlock. I wasn't moving back in, not really. The apartment was enough for me now, but I wasn't letting this place rot either. The backyard was a mess. Lawn half dead, yellowed in wide patches. The fire pit I'd built out of brick was full of wine bottles and half-burned receipts, a forgotten party's ashes. I crouched and sifted through the cold, wet soot until something caught my eye. A scrap of paper, edges charred but legible. A holiday receipt from a store called Lux House Home. $780, one wine decanter. My stomach turned. That same week, Caleb ignored my call about the broken furnace back in December. They were dropping nearly $800 on Crystal. It wasn't just betrayal, it was mockery. Later that evening, I drove to the storage unit I'd been renting for years. The metal door groaned as I rolled it up, dust swirling in the beam of my flashlight. Inside were the pieces of a life I hadn't known what to do with. Old fishing rods, a photo album from Marilyn's first teaching year, Christmas bins stacked like quiet time capsules. I found the old ornaments, the real ones, hand-painted by Marilyn when her hands were still steady, each one a tiny scene, a snowman with our names, a mommy river bridge with twinkling lights, Caleb's baby footprint in gold. I brushed off the dust and felt her there for a second. I drove them back and placed them carefully in the front window of the Ridgeview house. Each one caught the streetlight, tiny sparks of color against the dark. Then I opened the hall, closet, and slid my coat back onto the hook where it used to live. The weight of it there felt right. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like reclamation. But then I made a mistake. I checked Caleb's social media. He hadn't blocked me. Probably forgot I even followed him. There he was, grinning with Kristen in some upscale downtown loft. Wide windows, exposed brick, stainless steel appliances gleaming behind them. Caption, fresh start. Sometimes you've got to shed the past to step into your future. One comment caught my eye. From Elliot, Kristen's father. Proud of you, son. You handled it like a man. That word, son. It hit harder than I expected. For years, I gave Caleb everything. My time, my tools, my home. And now he was calling someone else dad, in every way that mattered. He wasn't just trying to replace me, he already had. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the Ridgeview kitchen with the lights off, just me and the hum of the refrigerator. The wind pressed soft moans against the window panes. Somewhere in the distance, a plow scraped asphalt, metal against frozen road. Around 2 a.m., I pulled the shoebox back out. Inside was something I hadn't seen in over a decade. A folded letter Caleb wrote me the day he graduated high school. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the ink was still dark. His teenage scrawl leaned hard to the right. Thank you for everything, Dad. I hope I make you proud. My thumb hovered over the word Dad for a long time. For the first time in a long time, I cried. Not loud, just quiet tears that soaked the heel of my hand. Not because of what I'd lost, but because of how far we'd both fallen. The next morning, I called a realtor. I told her I wanted the house listed. Not immediately, but soon. Any renovation plans? She asked, voice brisk but kind. No, I said. Let it sell as it is, worn and real. She hesitated. You'll get more if we stage it. I'm not trying to impress anyone, I told her. Just trying to move on. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, I understand. Maybe she really did. Maybe she'd seen this kind of heartbreak before. The listing went live on January 28th. No open house. No balloons tied to the mailbox. No fresh coat of paint to hide the dents and fingerprints that told a story. Just 3 simple photos, front, back, and kitchen, and a description that didn't try to sell anything it wasn't. 3-bedroom colonial, owned since 2001, paid off in full. No mortgage, no drama, title clear, make your offer. That was it. Straight, honest. The way I wished life still was. It was up for less than a week before the calls started. First was a contractor from Sandusky who wanted to flip it, his voice quick and sharp, already calculating square footage and profit margins before he even saw the place. Then came a retired nurse hoping to move closer to her grandkids, sweet but non-committal. But the one that stopped me cold was a young couple, Maria and Tom, early 30s, married 7 years. First home. They said they didn't need anything fancy, just something solid, something to build a life on. They reminded me of Marilyn and me, back when we still believed that hard work built roots you could trust. We set up a viewing on a Tuesday afternoon. Snow powdered the lawn. Slush clung stubbornly to the front steps. The porch light, still loose from last summer, flickered faintly against the gray sky. Tom noticed the old swing set before he'd even crossed the yard. "You planning to take that down?" he asked, brushing snow from his jacket sleeve. I shook my head. "Not unless you want me to." He looked at Maria. She smiled, soft and hopeful. "We'd like to keep it. Maybe give it a fresh coat of paint." Something in me shifted at that. They walked through the house slow, not like buyers, like listeners. They ran their hands along door frames, whispered to each other quietly, almost reverently, as if the walls had secrets they wanted to hear. They didn't treat it like a commodity. They treated it like a place to live, to grow old in, to dream inside. I liked that. Before they left, Tom turned back to me at the front door. His breath curled white in the cold. "Why are you selling?" I paused, looked past him at the bare trees swaying in the winter wind, then gave it to him straight. "Because the wrong people lived here for too long, and now it's time for the right ones." He didn't smile, just nodded slowly, like he understood something that couldn't fit neatly into words. The next morning their offer came in. Fair, honest, no haggling, no games. I accepted without counter. But before I handed over the keys, I had one more thing to do. A final act. Not of spite, of clarity. I printed 3 thick folders. Folder 1, the original deed, signed and notarized in 2001. Folder 2, 22 years of receipts, mortgage payments, tax bills, utilities, right down to the $27.49 Meyer receipt for the first Christmas tree Caleb ever picked out himself. Folder 3, the certified eviction notice, the county clerk's stamp, the legal notice printed in the paper, and the voicemail from Kristen's brother, the one full of curses and empty threats. I drove across town on February 4th. Gray sky, salt-stained roads, my hands tight on the steering wheel. I didn't call ahead, didn't ask permission, just walked into Caleb's new office building, an open-floor startup space with too much glass and too little soul. The receptionist blinked as I stepped up to her desk, my boots squeaking on the polished floor. "I need to drop this off for Caleb Jensen," I said, holding out the envelope. She hesitated, eyeing the thick packet. "May I ask what this is regarding?" I looked her straight in the eye, steady and calm. "Just proof." She swallowed, nodded, and took the envelope like it might burn. I turned and walked out, without looking back. That night, my phone rang. Caleb. Not yelling this time, not fueled by anger. His voice sounded different, tired, maybe older. "You really did it," he said. "I did." "You sold the house? Closing's next week." There was silence on the line, long enough that I could hear him breathing. Then finally, was it all really worth it? I let his question hang in the air for a moment. "Was disrespecting me at Christmas worth it to you?" I asked. He didn't answer. I kept going, voice quiet but sharp. "I worked 2 jobs to keep that roof over your head. Gave up everything after your mother died. And you gave my chair to a man who's never lifted a finger for you? I heard him exhale, shaky. I thought you'd always be there, he said softly. I was, I said, until you told me to move. Another long silence, then something almost human in his voice, something I hadn't heard in years. Will you come to Grace's birthday? Grace, my granddaughter, 5 in March. I let that hang too, feeling its weight. Then I said, we'll see. I didn't go, not out of vengeance, but because some lessons don't need yelling. They need silence. I wanted him to sit in that empty chair, feel its coldness, and know what it cost to push me out. The closing happened on February 12th. Maria and Tom signed. I signed. The lawyer, a quiet man with a warm handshake, looked me in the eye. You did good, Mr. Jensen. It's a good house. It is, I said. Now it's got good people. Maria handed me a thank you card. Inside was a photo of the two of them on the porch, keys raised high. Underneath, written in careful script, we promise to honor the life this house had before us. I almost broke right there in the office, but I held it in until I was back in my truck, parked behind the title office. The wind rocked the cab gently. I sat there a long time, breathing in the quiet, the weight of 23 years finally sliding off my shoulders like an old coat. Later that week, I boxed up the last of my things from the apartment. Shoebox, letters, a faded flannel shirt that still smelled faintly of Maryland's cinnamon soap, and moved into a small cabin outside Bowling Green. 1 bedroom, a real fireplace that popped and hissed with each burning log. No Wi-Fi, just trees whispering against the roof and the occasional hoot of an owl, and peace. But I kept one thing, the chair, the one they took from me. After the house was empty, I found it shoved in the garage behind plastic bins, coated in dust, one leg cracked, as if it were trash. I slid it carefully into the truck bed and drove it home. Spent a slow afternoon in the cabin's quiet, repairing the crack with wood glue and a clamp I'd had since 1982. The smell of fresh sawdust filled the air as I sanded it smooth. I stained it dark, polished it until it gleamed like it once did when Marilyn first ran her hand along its arm and smiled. Now it sits by the fireplace, angled toward the wide window that looks out over the trees. No one will ever take that seat from me again. I didn't hear from Caleb for almost 2 months after the certified folder landed in his lap. Not a word, not a text, not even a missed call on the old flip phone I still keep for emergencies. The one with a cracked screen and numbers worn down from years of use. I'd expected anger, maybe even a voicemail, like the one Kristen's brother left, spitting threats and cheap insults. But instead, there was just silence. And silence, I've learned, cuts sharper than shouting ever could. It lingers. It echoes. It makes a man replay every word he didn't say, every warning he swallowed to keep the peace. But silence also gives a man time to think, and in that quiet, something inside me starts to dissettle. I came to terms with a few hard truths. Some people grow out of their roots, and that's fine. That's what growth is supposed to look like. But when they rip those roots clean out of the ground, pretending they don't owe anything to where they came from, that's when you show them what happens when the foundation bites back. March 23rd, the first real day of spring thaw. I was sitting on the back porch of my cabin, a little slice of solitude tucked outside Bowling Green. The air smelled like thawing earth and maple sap. That early warmth you only get in March, fragile, fleeting, brushed across the porch rails and carried the scent of wet bark. Sunlight broke through the bare tree limbs, scattering light and shadow across the ground like stained glass. The boards creaked beneath my boots. A crow cawed from somewhere near the creek. The whole world seemed to be holding its breath between winter and spring. That's when my phone rang, not the burner, my real one. The smartphone I only turn on once a week, just to make sure the world hasn't ended. The name on the screen made my stomach twist. Caleb. For a second I thought about letting it ring out, letting it vanish into the woods like every other sound that didn't need an answer. But something in me, Something I thought had gone cold softened. I answered, "Hi, Dad." His voice was small. Not the self-assured, tight-jawed tone I'd heard last Christmas. It was the voice of a boy again. The boy who used to run to me with skinned knees, clutching drawings from school like they were treasure maps. I said nothing. He hesitated. "I'm calling because Grace has been asking about you." Still, I stayed quiet. "She remembers the candy cane pancakes you made her last Christmas." That hit harder than I wanted it to. The smell of peppermint and vanilla flashed in my mind. The way she'd giggled when the whipped cream made a mustache on her face. "She's been asking why you didn't come to her party." My voice finally came, slow, even. "Did you tell her I wasn't invited?" He didn't answer, but silence can confess what pride never will. "I didn't know how to explain it," he said finally, voice low. "You explained it the same way you explained that chair on Christmas night," I said. "You tell her Papa got told to move, and so he did." The line went quiet again, long enough for the sound of the wind to slip between us. Then softly, "I'm sorry, Dad." No defensiveness, no excuses, just a man trying to find the words he should have said months ago. "I messed up," he continued. "I thought I was doing what Kristen wanted, what the image needed. But the more I tried to replace you, the more I realized how much you were still there." I leaned back in my chair, the wood warm under me from the afternoon sun. "Still there?" I said quietly. "I was never gone." "I know." I heard him sniff, a small sound. "Honest." He cleared his throat. "I saw the letter you left for the buyers," he said. "They showed it to me. Said they'd never seen a man talk about a house like that." He paused. "I want to come visit. Just me and Grace." "No Kristen?" I asked. He hesitated. "No, not this time." Something in his voice told me this wasn't rebellion. It was reflection. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he said, "but I'd like to see you. I'd like her to see you." I looked out at the trees, the branches trembling under a weak gust of wind. One of the maples had started budding early. A fool's optimism, I thought. "Still," I said, "all right. Sunday afternoon. Bring her coat. It gets cold up here after 4. I hung up. Didn't wait for thank yous. Didn't need 'em. Sunday came. The morning was clear, the kind that tricks you into thinking winter's gone for good. By noon, the lights softened across the yard. I heard the crunch of gravel before I saw them. A silver hybrid SUV rolled slowly up the dirt drive. Caleb stepped out first. He looked thinner, paler. His hair was longer than I'd ever seen it. No tie, no polished shoes, just jeans and a jacket that hung loose on his shoulders. And then the back door flew open. Grace came barreling out before he even had a chance to unbuckle her seatbelt. She ran full speed, boots thumping against the packed dirt, arms wide like wings. "Papa!" Her voice cut through the still air, bright and alive. I crouched, arms out, and caught her mid-run. She fit perfectly against my chest, light as air. I spun her once, just once, slow enough not to drop her, and she laughed. It was the same laugh her dad used to have when he was 5. Only difference was, I still remembered it. Inside, she sat cross-legged on the rug by the fireplace, coloring with a fresh pack of Crayolas I'd picked up from Dollar General the day before. The smell of wax and smoke from the fire mixed in the air. Caleb stood by the window. His eyes landed on the chair. The chair? The same one he'd let another man sit in. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His face said enough. A small tightening of the jaw, the faintest tremor in his throat. I said nothing. He turned, then walked over to the rug, sat down beside Grace, not on the couch, not on the other chair, on the floor. He helped her peel the paper off a crayon. She whispered something, and he smiled. For the first time in a long time, that smile looked real. And for the first time in years, I saw the boy I used to know, quiet, humble, listening more than he spoke. We didn't talk much that afternoon, didn't need to. Sometimes silence, the good kind, says what words can't. They stayed for about 2 hours. We drank hot cocoa. Grace showed me her drawings. Caleb fixed the loose handle on my kitchen drawer without me asking. Small things. Healing things. When it was time to leave, Grace hugged me 3 times. Once around the neck, once around the waist, and once just because. Caleb stood there a moment, uncertain, then reached out his hand. I took it. He pulled me in halfway, an awkward, stiff motion, but it was close enough to count. "I'll call you next week," he said. I shook my head. "Don't call," I told him. He blinked. "Drive up again." He nodded, and for the first time in a long, long time, I believed he actually would. The next morning, I made coffee and sat in the chair by the fire. Steam curled into the air, catching the early light spilling through the window. Birdsong threaded through the trees outside, weaving into the rhythm of crackling wood. The house was quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. I took a slow sip, let the warmth fill the quiet spaces inside me. The sunlight stretched across the floor, inch by inch, until it reached the arm of the chair, the same arm I'd repaired with my own hands. It glowed there, golden, like the world had finally exhaled. And I realized something. I hadn't won anything. There was no victory, no scoreboard, just peace. A quiet, steady knowing that I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. I'd simply made space for what was real. And somewhere down Route 23, a little girl in a silver SUV carried my name forward on her lips, talking about candy cane pancakes and her papa in the woods. That was enough. That was everything. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.